The 2020 X-Men film is really weird. I mean, to be fair, the opening is just not great. So basically, we open up to a classic cold front opening with a little girl getting rushed out by her father to escape an unidentifiable threat. The father then dies, and she's rushed to what seems to be a hospital. However, it's one of those mutant facilities that we've seen in previous films, such as Logan. The doctor comes out, and it's been told to her that she's the only survivor of this event, and they don't know anything about it. So, very convenient. She basically gets told that her entire family got put in a spliff, and resultantly, she's a mutant. The doctor lady knows a bloke who discovers mutants' true powers. So initially we're thinking this is going to be Professor X or someone like that, but we don't actually know. The holding facility is literally a prison. The doctor, i.e. the only person she's met so far in this film, is pretty sweet. It doesn't really feel like a concentration camp for the genetically gifted, but it still feels really strange, right? I mean, so far the dialogue hasn't been terrible. The cold open is a little boring, but a lot of origin stories are, so that's not really a criticism. The first scene basically just sets up the protagonist, the fact they're a mutant, as well as the doctor, whom she's supposed to be drawn to, because she's actually quite compassionate, but also running this gig on her own, basically purely to help others, by the seams of things. Scene 2 sees us introduced to these new characters, who are also mutants, and it's kind of like an AA meeting. There's like a circle of chairs, and they're all kind of sitting there chatting. I'll show a picture on screen. Now, I know two of the actors from this, actually. First we have Macy Williams, who is Arya Stark in Game of Thrones, and Anna Taylor-Joy, who's the lady from The Northman. She's also just a really famous actor at the moment. The Doctor then basically complains that they're not talking. And they are all talking about the main character, and she, the main character is called Danny, enters the room. Now, Macy Williams in this is Scottish, and for some reason I just found this really funny. I'm not even sure she's Scottish IRL, but it was kind of entertaining. So, here's a clip. Danny and Taylor-Joy's character, Magic, then just leave. Danny, realising there's no gates, just tries to run away, and Magic just taunts her. She keeps running until she breaks her nose, bumping headfirst into a barrier. Lovely. Bruh. Danny then goes to beat the fuck out of Magic for being a helmet, basically, and she just teleports away. So we now know that Magic is one of those teleporting mutants. It's like, well, literally magic, as her name would suggest. Although it's magic with a K, so, you know. Ooh. Sorry, I'm being a twat. We then jump cut to Danny trying to throw herself off the building, realising that she's trapped in what is essentially a cage, and this she sees the only way out. Then Arya Stark rocks up and is like, yo, you'll probably die if you jump from here. Macy's character isn't actually Arya Stark, they're called Wolfsbane. She basically tells her that she believes that people who game end themselves go straight to hell. So she basically just convinces her not to. It's really bad convincing, but it works. We then learn that Sunspot, who's another one of the people, is a really rich guy from Brazil. And there's another guy, Sam, as well, who's basically just Bomb from Angry Birds. I'll show a video on screen of what I mean by that.
Holy shit, I thought it just exploded.
No, that's his thing. He can blast off 0 to 100 like a cannonball. Not so good at landing though.
Is this like practice?
I don't know. Sometimes it seems like he's out here just trying to hurt himself.
We find from this weird dream sequence in a washing machine that Sam did something in a Kentucky mine. We don't really know what, but assuming that he's in this institution, it's not going to be something good, right? We then jump cut to him just punching himself in the face in a toilet. Not only now have we seen him like catapulting him around this basketball court, like self-harming basically, he's now literally doing it as well, just beating the shit out of himself. So, you know, we're automatically thinking this guy is, you know, mentally on the rocks. We then go back into the AA meeting, and it's just a bit weird. Someone just says control about 20 times. That's that, really. Jump cut to Magic just being racist to Danny because she's raised a Native American, and then she just tries to kill her. This is for the reason that they're trying to expose what her mutation is. But it just comes out really strange and out of the blue. Like, it's one of those moments where they're trying to, like, move forward the plot, but they don't really know how to. And I'll address that towards the end of the video on why I think this is. The Doctor then just hops in and just sends him off to solitary confinement. Again, this doesn't seem like any addition to the plot, further than enforcing his magic is just a dickhead. That, like, literally none of them like either. We then get a flashback to Magic's childhood, and this bloke she calls the the smiling man, this really tall guy who looks like Slender Man, who attacked her as a child. Now, this is while she's in solitary, and it's quite interesting because it is almost human, like, it's a humanizing moment for her, because so far she's just basically been a massive bully. She's been making fun of the Brazilian bloke and also Danny, just pretty much relentlessly. And so this is a moment of kind of, oh, she's not just a monster, although, well, she is, but you get what I mean. We then get a flashback to Magic's childhood. I've just said that. Wolfsbane goes on to confess that she got called a witch, and she goes to confess in like a chamber, so, you know, confession booth in a Catholic church because she's Catholic. And she just gets called a witch by an invisible apparition who like opens up the door and sits opposite her, but you can't see her. It's just screaming the word witch to her, and she sprints out. So from what I understand about these two kind of parts of the plot, and the washing machine moment, is basically it's exposing the past trauma that either possibly triggered their mutations, or is why they're so fucked up, like, mentally. So obviously we do see in other films that yes, there are a lot of mutants, but most of them, like, mentally are relatively sane. But these guys are obviously, like, justifiably in a prison, to be honest. Like, they're not safe to go out into society, put it that way. The mutant man then play Truth or Dare with the lie detector. At this point, the Doctor's just, you know, having a little sleep. They go one by one, and the Kentucky boy Sam has arguably his most captivating moment. Now, let's not get it twisted. Sam very clearly hates himself. He says he even belongs in the asylum. It's also exposed here that he blew up his father, and the only thing he has left of him is a lump of coal. So Sam beating himself up earlier and launching around the basketball court, shown on screen at this time, suggests that the poor guy genuinely just thinks he's a freak of nature. He doesn't believe he deserves human contact or freedom. And that's honestly why he's probably the most interesting character in this entire film, like throughout. Magic then gets hooked up in the chair and says she killed 18 men. I mean, the lie detector doesn't go off as well, so, I mean, based, she just committed mass murder. It's a really strange moment. They then go back to AA and, yeah, it's just nonsense again. The AA meetings, honestly, they're all shit. Nothing happens in any of them. They're kind of pointless. They're not very long though, so, you know, it is what it is. I think it's just mainly there just for development, as in, oh no, they are getting, like, you know, help, if you can call it that. But anyway, after that, Magic drugs the Doctor, and she goes to sleep. We then get an explanation from Sam of why he's in the institution. He basically blew up his dad because he got really claustrophobic in a mine and it triggered his mutation. But obviously he couldn't control it and everyone in the mine died. Sam then asks what Roberto did, and Roberto just walks off. Like, we know nothing about Roberto. We know basically everything about Sam. We know something about Danny and Magic. And we know a little bit about Wolfsbane. But we know nothing about Roberto at all. Now, he does say his family are rich Brazilian billionaires, but that might not even be true. So, you know, it is strange. They all just mess about for a bit because there's no one to keep them in line. Danny Wolfsbane goes to an area that Wolfsbane knows of in a church complex. They just look up at the dome and just make out, basically. Yeah, that's literally it. Roberto and Magic then also start getting off, but then Roberto starts literally, like, he sets himself on fire. Then he states that he burnt through his girlfriend while holding her at one point, and that's probably why he's in the institution. We still don't know though. He then gets set on fire by a demon, and the doctor wakes up and finds him just like engulfed in flames. And and basically, yeah, that happens. That's literally it. Danny then gets a jab. I can't really remember why. I don't think there was actually any reason or rhyme to it at all. It's just being tested on by the doctor, I think. And then we get a flashback to the cold open. She then starts like freaking out that one of the monitors is going off the charts. And then some weird stuff starts to happen. So the preacher appears to Wolfsbane and brands her with a W for witch. Now she already had one on her back from earlier, and that is like one of the traumatizing moments that we mentioned earlier. But now he gets her again on the neck, and he's real as well. This isn't like an apparition. The smiling man then appears to Magic and like starts like freaking her the fuck out, right? Wolfsbane then runs out and everyone like finds her location. Upon arrival, they see the W on her neck and everyone's like, what? Like, that's real, right? It's not like an illusion or anything. It was genuinely real. Magic then just appears out of nowhere. I don't know what happened to the smiling man. I think it just disappeared. Again, yeah. Like what? You know? Before rushing with her powers, Danny conjures an apparition of the smiling man and basically terrifies Magic. Upon conceiving this apparition, she just stops attacking her. I mean, understandably, she's having like a terrible nightmare. And this allows the doctor to basically just knock her out with a injection. Now, what Magic said was interesting, because Magic basically says that Danny's superpower, or her mutation, is that it summons the worst nightmare, or the biggest fear, of the individual that's attacking her to protect her. And like, upon this, because she doesn't obviously conjure that thing up on Magic, she just runs up to her and it happens. It does basically confirm that this is the case. I mean, it's like a really awesome superpower, but you can obviously understand why she's an institution if that is the case. She then goes to apologize to Magic for scaring the shit out of her. And we get a really interesting bit of exposition here. So Magic basically tells her that the smiling men were people that were making her cry as a child, so she made them smile. I mean, it's not exactly clear what this means, but it is pretty terrifying. They made me cry, so I made them smile. Now they're all wearing surgical lab coats. I'll put a picture of them on screen actually, just so it's easy to see what they look like. But it's probably terrifying. It's also explained from the perspective of a child, which makes it like a bit more creepy. I feel like in general horror, when something is from the perspective of a child, no, this isn't technically horror, it's from the perspective of a child, it is more unnerving. And when this child has this ability like she has, it's even more terrifying. We then cut to the doctor, who got an email from Essex Corporation telling her to put down Danny. Now, to be honest, I don't really know what Essex Corporation is, so I'll have a look. Okay, so Essex Corporation is run by a bloke called Mr. Sinister. I'm not sure who that is. Yeah, there's basically nothing about it online, but bearing in mind they're trapped in like a church and like a mental asylum, I can't imagine he's very nice. And also bear in mind his name is Mr. Sinister, and it's a fucking superhero film. I'm assuming he's not a nice guy. Might be a hot take there though, I don't know. So basically, we find out now that Danny is someone that just conjures demons. Again, cool. Danny then tells Wolfgirl that this isn't a hospital. She saw the doctors in the doctor's mind when she was getting like rushed by Magic, and she saw there was a testing facility for mutants. It was a bit like the things you see in Logan in the film. I'll put it up on screen now. But yeah, Danny proceeds to be experimented on by the doctor. The doctor then indirectly tells Danny she's just going to put her down through an analogy with a dog with rabies. She said, oh, I don't want to do this, but, you know, I had a rabid dog once and my mum had to put it down, you know? Basically, it's just really shit, right? Sorry. The doctor then poisons Danny, but Wolf bitch rocks up and messes up the doctor, like smashing her up and all that. Wolf Scott saves Danny rather than killing the doctor instead, though. The doctor then runs off and Danny is saved by Wolverine. The mutants then convene in the doctor's room and read their files. The only one we actually get to hear on screen is that of Magic, who is described as unlimited killing potential. basically affirming the idea that these are simply being born to be trained killers by Essex Corp who plan to use them as weapons. Then plan to track down the Doctor. The Doctor then traps in one of those like weird perimeters I'll show on screen. Sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier. The entire area is trapped by like this invisible perimeter, which was the thing that Danny ran into right at the start of the film. It's like a bubble shield kind of thing. Yeah, she basically traps all of them in there, so that's her mutation, the Doctor's, is to just be able to trap people, I see. Danny then summons this massive demon bear and it just eats the Doctor. Yeah, great. The mutants then have to try and fight the bear. And then, you know, blah blah blah, big fight. Yeah, shit. Danny's knocked out. And he then wakes up and, like, tells the bear... Well, no, she tames it, actually. Like, seriously, what the fuck? Like, we all saw... Like, this is the most foreseeable shit ever. Like, I don't mind this trope in superhero films of, like, oh no, like, the good guys winning. I mean, they're not really fucking good guys, but you know what I mean. Like, the people that you have an affinity for winning. Sure. But I don't know, it was just quite lame, really. I don't know, something about it. But you know what it is? I think it's more the fact that none of the characters die. Nothing really happens. And I know it's symbolic of, oh, Danny's defeats her greatest fear. But, you know, come on. There's some cringe dialogue at the end as well, just kind of like, oh, we can do whatever we want now, and they do. Now, this film isn't terrible, don't get me wrong. It's not good, but it's not terrible. I mean, certainly there are parts of it that are pretty decent. It's just everything the X-Men has been doing wrong the past 10 years. Besides Deadpool and Logan, they've kind of lost their way with X-Men. I mean, personally, I didn't think it was fantastic. I think since X-Men, like 1, 2, and 3 came out, they've been getting weaker and weaker. I mean, X-Men is kind of the only part of Marvel I actually like. I mean, sure, the Avengers is, like, okay, but it's a little too kind of superhero-y. Whereas the X-Men is kind of, I don't know, more realistic. It's more human. I don't know, I just don't think this film quite got it right. You know, I think the old films had nuance. It was kind of narrative perspective that you could see both sides of the kind of mutants. So if you want to call it, I don't know, survivalism and kind of cooperation. Survivalism kind of being, you know, Magneto's side, and I guess cooperation being more Professor X's side. But both you can agree with, and both you kind of find compelling at different parts of the narrative. With this, there was no overarching, like, compelling narrative. It was just basically a teen drama in a hospital. Like, don't get me wrong, they could have been good. And don't get me wrong, some of the actors in this were absolutely fantastic. But I don't know. They could have tied it in a bit nicer, I think, as well. I mean, this is a piece of media that doesn't have anything to do with the kind of larger films, and to some degree that could have worked. But I think the way they did it just didn't quite. I mean, the only slight link was to that, like I mentioned earlier, with Logan, when they have the testing facilities and you're seeing those children getting tortured. And then also a similar thing with Deadpool 2, I think, where Russell, like, breaks out of that asylum, basically, they're just holding children. So yeah, it is somewhat related, but it could have been more so. Or just done better if they were doing it otherwise. Now, sure, it doesn't seem likely there would be a follow-up due to the fact that the critical kind of reaction wasn't very good, and I do think it's a shame. I mean, the general idea of the film is quite good. It's a little clunky, but the characters are generally quite interesting. I mean, this is the thing with the X-Men, is it's kind of like there's nowhere to take it. The film's kind of ended with Wolverine holding Jean and screaming into the world in the third film, and now they're kind of just adding more and more and more. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think, again, the way they've gone about it, the decision making, when I come back to this again, is kind of the problem. They either need to do something really strong with it, or just let it go at this point. Sure, X-Men Origins Wolverine was a good watch. I did like it, was decent, but apart from that and Logan, there hasn't really been anything solid since the third film. The thing was, the really strongly character-driven narratives, such as Wolverine and Deadpool, have been really damn good. In fact, I'd say they're probably some of the strongest Marvel films released within the past 10 years. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a Marvel fan, I really don't care for it. I've rewatched the last 3 Marvel X-Men films in the last few days, having not seen them for about 10 years, and they still hold up. I mean, the new one's like the 2019 one that follows Phoenix was big shit, to be honest. And to be frank, Days of Future Past could have been a good launchpad into the future stuff with some classic X-Men again, but they kind of messed it up. You know, not to spoil Days of Future Past if you haven't watched it, and it's quite old, so probably should have watched it by now. But it comes back, and basically the entire original roster of the first class of X-Men are all there. And it's pretty cool. And they basically had unlimited potential to reboot the franchise there. They just didn't. Now, the issue is it's kind of just become lazy now, right? There is no nuance anymore. And sure, I don't know if I'm just looking at the old films through rose-tinted nostalgia, but come on. I mean, they've got some good content in the pipeline if they do follow this up. Like I was saying, Magic and Sam, they're genuinely really interesting characters. Danny as well, a good character. And there's so much stuff they could write, because Stan Lee has probably shelves on shelves on shelves of content for X-Men and Marvel as a whole. There's definitely good stuff they could do with this. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, I don't know. There's just some really interesting stuff. And you know what? For the sake of this, I hope they do well, because Macy Williams is a really good actor. Anna Taylor-Joy is also a very good actor. Charlie Heaton is a damn good actor. And their performance were pretty damn good in this as well. It was just the general writing wasn't that great. I think it was just limited. And this is what I was going to talk about earlier. I think this plot is just limited. Now, that's not to say that films with small casts and limited area are bad. I mean, take for example The Wall, Gravity, or Hell in the Pacific. These have very small casts, and the actual area that they can work in is very limited. But I don't think this did it well at all. So no. Like I said, it can work. It didn't. I hope it gets better. And I know it can get better, which is why I'm slowly disappointed. But you know what? Rant over. I kind of am done here. Alright. See you. So, that was that. Hopefully you enjoyed that. You probably didn't. Maybe some of the wording was a bit off. But yeah, if you did enjoy it, like it. If you didn't like it, dislike it. And if you want to see more random stuff from me, because it won't all be like this, there'll be some kind of stuff that will come out that's like this, then subscribe. But yeah, I had quite a lot of fun making this video. I did also forget to mention the trope that I actually really like in X-Men films. And it's so good, in fact, they had to basically do it in Deadpool. They actually killed Deadpool's wife just to do this. Or girlfriend or fiancé. The trope where the main protagonist's, interest dies, and then they have the flashback scenes into, a kind of heavenly feature, where they then get to talk to them again. That, hands down, is the best trope in X-Men. Any of them. I can't tell you why I like it so much. There's just something about it that's so, I don't know, it's just nice. I think it's almost like the serenity and the madness that kind of come together. It's almost beautiful. No? Yeah, that's that. Alright, see ya.
Hey, I just met you, and this is crazy, but here's my number, so call me maybe. It's hard to look right at you, baby.